Slick Willie Dahl is at it again. Today, I'm going to set the record straight on some things that he said. But more importantly, he wants to raise your taxes. This is the Bunker Bob Show. Let's go. Well, it is good to have you back with me today, and I realize I have another speaker on right now, so let me go turn that off real quick, and I'll be right back with you. Yeah, this is what happens when you do your own show, and when you have when I am the entire crew, and so that's somewhat symptomatic of a show like this, and so one of the things that I wanted to say is welcome back. It's Monday, and thank you for joining me today. And one of the things that this whole show, I'm just going to be focusing on one issue, one topic, and that is Slick Willie Dahl. Mr. Dahl has really gone off the rails, in my opinion, with information that is not just outrageous, but a lot of it's untrue. But the problem is, I think the guy actually believes what he's saying on some of it. Let's start with the big issue. And the big issue is that William Dahl, the Slick Willie Dahl, believes that that we need to be taxing you for the infrastructure in the Sonoma Verde development. And I'm going to just let you hear what he has to say yourself, and then then we'll come back. There's a 2-minute clip. So this is from his Facebook page that he broadcast last week after the 8-hour city council meeting, the special city council meeting. And remember how William Dahl and the others used to criticize me for long meetings. This was an 8-hour meeting where they did not record it. They didn't broadcast it live. And the minutes are anemic. And anyone who attended that, which were just 2 people, Scott Turnbull was one of them, we heard from him last week, anyone who attended was actually looking at the council members' backs because they set the tables up so that if you were in the audience, you would be looking at their backs. They would not be looking at you or talking to you. In fact, microphones were not even on during this 8-hour session. But here's what Dahl came out of this session with, and it's shocking.
Another thing that we're going to do is I want to set up a fund for replacement and maintenance of infrastructure. City currently has around just in Sonoma Verde, the city has $11,237,000 worth of physical assets in Sonoma Verde. That's infrastructure. That's roads, sewer lines, water lines. The city owns it. Right now, as it stands, we actually have no fund specifically for this. We have a general fund, which is kind of wide open to use for anything. And then we have, and that's pretty much it. We don't have a special earmarked funds that are allocated towards maintaining and or replacement of our city's infrastructure, these facilities. We want to make sure that we come in there and we have a plan. So if we know in 15 years that facility is going to start to need operational maintenance to keep it running for an additional 5 years, it gives us the chance now to know exactly how much it's going to cost to maintain that facility. But at the same time, it gives us the opportunity to start a little bit away every single year towards whatever that goal is. So that way, if that facility needs to be repaired or replaced, we already have the funds. They're already allocated. They're already earmarked, making sure that we not only maintain the city's infrastructure is paramount, but at the same time to make sure that we are good stewards of the taxpayers' funds, to make sure that we plan accordingly, to make sure those facilities are going to be maintained in the future.
Yeah, so how are you going to pay for that? So he's talking about now. Let's put this all in perspective. We have a city hall that the people of McLennan Chisholm did not want. We did not get to vote on. That cost $2.125 million. They had to raise our taxes several cents for that, which is basically the bulk of your taxes. Were before they raised our taxes for the for that, and then they tried to raise it even more for other things that they had on their plate. But the city hall building is $2.125 million. What William Dahl is talking about is an almost $11 million infrastructure for Sonoma Verde. But it's what William Dahl says in those comments that's really most shocking of all. And I think it's important that let me just replay that one little section about it that he talks about. He says we have all of this infrastructure, and what does he say about how that is going to be funded? Watch this.
Just in Sonoma Verde, the city has $11,237,000 worth of physical assets in Sonoma Verde. That's infrastructure. That's roads, sewer lines, water lines. The city owns it. Right now, as it stands, we actually have no fund specifically for this. We have a general fund, which is kind of wide open to use for anything. And then we have, and that's pretty much it. We don't have a special earmarked funds that are allocated towards maintaining and or replacement of our city's infrastructure, these facilities.
Wow. Really? We don't? We don't have money allocated to support this infrastructure? Here's what's interesting, and here's what citizens, those of you who pay attention, here's what you need to remember, that they just had an 8-hour meeting. They just had an 8-hour board meeting. And part of that board meeting, they called it a retreat, a board retreat. And part of that board retreat was meeting with the PID administrator for the Sonoma Verde development. And what did the PID administrator inform them? Well, if you weren't there, you won't know. But what the PID administrator explained to them is that everyone who lives in Sonoma Verde has to pay into a PID. And they have two parts of that PID. Now, I realize that there's a lot of people watching right now and going, are you kidding me? You're going to talk about this again? Yes. And the reason why is because it doesn't seem like William Dahl understands this. It doesn't seem like Slick Willie understands it. You have two parts of a PID. And as a lot owner, when I buy a lot in the Sonoma Verde development, I basically, a portion of that I'm paying for with that lot is to pay off the PID infrastructure. And the second half is the maintenance, the long-time maintenance of the PID, of the Public Improvement District. The first part goes away. Once I pay it off, it's gone forever. If I sell my house, the person who moves into it doesn't have to pay it. But the second part, the maintenance part, goes to pay for the roads, the sewer, all of the infrastructure that's inside the city of McLennan Chisholm. Now, William Dahl says that there's no money, and we need to do something about that. So two things are happening here. Either William Dahl knows that the PID pays for it, and those of you in Sonoma Verde, apparently there's nothing in that fund. That's what he's telling you. Or William Dahl is completely incompetent, has no idea what he's talking about, and he wants taxpayers. He wants you. If you don't live in Sonoma Verde, he wants you to pay for Sonoma Verde streets. He wants you to pay for their infrastructure because his concern is how is that going to impact the long-term health of the Sonoma Verde development. Listen, understand, there's a lot of people in Sonoma Verde who funded Mr. Dahl's campaign. And I guess he's maybe throwing some bones out to them. The problem is that if Mr. William Dahl, if Slick Willie attempts to tax you and me, those of us who don't live in Sonoma Verde, for this. It's my understanding, and I don't know who. What was I? I was just mayor of McClendon Chisholm. It's my understanding that that is against the law. That you and me, citizens who don't live in Sonoma Verde, we can sue the city for misappropriation of funds. William Dahl knows exactly what he's talking about. He just doesn't really care. He's trying to create the illusion that something that he's fiscally responsible. And here's another example of this. So William Dahl wants to be fiscally responsible. He wants to be a good steward of taxpayer dollars. That's what he says in his little video. Excuse me. And so one of the things that he talks about then is the fire department and the line item. So listen to what William Dahl says about the fire department and in the budget, and then let's talk about that.
But one of the things that we as a council were focused on is we were actually pretty much zeroing in with a laser pointer about the fire department, which has always been a hot topic in this town. But one of the things that we noticed about the fire department was the fact that it doesn't have its own fund. It doesn't have its own line item, which is concerning because it's a different department. So the way it's set up right now is, the way it was explained to us is that instead of it being its own funded line item,
right,
it was put in this public safety, what our CPA like to call a bucket.
Yeah.
And it was done that way under direction of former council, former mayor.
Oh. Under my direction.
What we want to do,
okay,
for transparency purposes.
Oh, good, transparency. I love hearing.
We want to take the fire department out of that bucket.
Ah.
And turn it into its own line item.
Oh, wow. That is amazing. Boy, am I glad that we've got William Slick Willie Dahl on the city council. Now, isn't this amazing that his idea is that the former mayor and city council, they just put the fire department in one big bucket. See, what Slick Willie doesn't want you to know is the truth. He doesn't want you to understand that the fire department used to be an independent of the city. You see, when I was mayor and on city council, and before that, the fire department was a vendor, literally. It is an organization. It's like landscaping on a budget. When we talk about a budget, I know people are going to go, "Did you hear former mayor talked about the fire department as being like a landscaping?" No, that's not what I said. What I said is, on a budget, that's how you budget a vendor. You put it in one line item, one budget under public safety. That's how you do it. Now, of course, Mr. Slick Willie here doesn't want you to know that as mayor, I tried to audit the fire department. Why did I do that? Because the fire department, though it was it was structured as a 501c4 organization, and that's how leftists and liberals define a private entity. It's by how it's structured. Conservatives like me define whether something is a private or public entity by how it's funded. And 100% of the MCVFD was funded by taxpayers. Now, I tried, and in fact, the fire department had agreed to an audit, a certified audit by an independent accounting firm going back 5 years. The year that I first came on city council, I said that we'll increase your budget by 46% as you request, so long as next year we can audit the fire department, because it makes 25% of the city's budget. And you don't have an accountant doing your accounting. They had a guy named Herman Larkin doing their accounting. We also knew that they had schemed to create a little I don't know, nice little cushy bed for themselves where they put in grant requests, that 3-page grant request that a fifth grader could fill in, and that the fire department had been filling in for years before, but they brought in a quote-unquote grant writer, which was actually the fire chief's brother, who has never been a grant writer in his life, but he became the grant writer so that he could get 10% of every grant awarded. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars. We've talked about that. I wanted the fire department audited so that we could see the line items in that vendor. But so the fact is, it wasn't because the city council and mayor directed, hey, Mr. Accountant, you need to just put everything in a bucket so that we can hide everything. No, in fact, it was exactly the opposite. We put it in a bucket because that's what you do with a bucket. That's what you do with a vendor. When the landscape, when you pay a landscaper to mow the grass and things, we don't put on that budget. We don't put things like lawnmowers and price of gas and the employee salaries or hourly payments. We don't put all of that on there. Why? Because that's not in our purview. The fire department's not governed by us, nor is the landscaping company, nor any other vendor back then. But of course, Mr. Dahl has this just enlightened view that, hey, now that the city owns the fire department and governs it, and now that we pay employees, and now, oh, wait a minute, now that we have things like fire trucks that are actually depreciated, that we actually have to account for, now that there is equipment that we have to account for, we need to do a line item. This is Slick Willie. He wants you to think that he's bringing transparency to the city of McClendon Chisholm, when in fact all he's doing is doing exactly what the accountant is telling him. Guys, we've got to split this out. Why? Because the fire department has just become a part of the city. Hey, there you go. When I was mayor, it was never a part of the city. That was after I left that the fire department became part of the city. But Mr. Dahl, in his wisdom, he wants to bring that transparency in. Here's another thing that I think is a little point that he makes that is hilarious. And there's a reason I'm going to point out his foible here. So listen to this.
When you have your fire department and you want to have your underlying line items underneath it, for example, infrastructure costs, consumables costs. Consumables would be, for example, fuel for the trucks. Consumables could also be gear that has to be replaced or it's consumed. For example, our bunker gear that our firefighters use has a operational life of 10 years. Done. That's it. It doesn't matter if it almost was never even used. Okay. Once that stuff gets used, it's utilized by a department, has an expiration date, and it's done. And that's for the safety of our firefighters.
Yeah, that's complete BS in this regard. It doesn't have an operational lifespan. It has a shelf life. That once that bunker gear is manufactured, then it has to be taken off. The fire department can't use it. Why is that important? Why am I drawing that, splitting that hair? Simply because he goes on in verbal diarrhea about how it's an issue of safety, that once these firefighters use it, it degrades because of he goes into all this nonsense. And the fact is, the TCFP, the Texas Commission on Fire Protection, mandates that those fire departments, because if you have a city-owned fire department, you are governed by the TCFP, Texas Commission on Fire Protection. And they require that your bunker gear adheres to the shelf life of it. And so that's the deal. My point is that Mr. Dahl, there's so many things that he doesn't understand about what's going on, and I think this next clip really I think points this fact out, despite the fact that he doesn't know what he's talking about himself. So listen to this. By
putting the fire department in this bucket, really not that transparent, because when we make our budget announcements during council meetings, and we post out that when we post that information, someone's going to look at it and say, oh, we got this single public safety line item, which is this big bucket of money. It's like, well, what part of that is salary? What part of that is operational costs of the what part of that is consumables? What part about it? And you could go through all the line items if you want, but we all think that for transparency purposes,
yes,
since the way that the fire department came about, I think it's better that everybody in our town knows exactly what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Everyone in our town should know what's going on, including you, Slick Willie. You haven't a clue what's going on. You have no idea why the fire department had to come into the city to begin with, Mr. Slick Willie. You have no idea. So this is. Let me let you hear a little bit more from our own Slick Willie.
My goals is to make sure that you have as much transparency as possible, and that's what I'm going to seek out to do.
Yeah, transparency. He's going to bring. Did you hear what he said? I'm going to bring about transparency. When I got on city council, I didn't say I was going about creating transparency. I was just transparent. When I was mayor, we were just transparent. We just did it. We didn't talk about it. We did it. We didn't have 8-hour meetings. In fact, when we had an 8-hour meeting, lasted until 2:00 in the morning. That meeting was recorded. It was live streamed and recorded on video as well. And we were looking at the audience. When Slick Willie talks about transparency, he's only kidding, folks. He's only kidding. That's what you need to know. But let's hear what else is important to Mr. Dahl. Could it be that he wants to be lean and mean on the budget? I wonder.
And B, I also want to make sure that if there is any pork in that budget, we cut it out. We keep it lean and mean.
Yeah, there you go. Lean and mean. He's going to keep the budget lean and mean, but first he's going to tax you to fund the infrastructure for Sonoma Verde, even if you don't live there. The man has no idea that there is a PID fund that funds that infrastructure, but he's going to keep our budget lean and mean. Boy, I feel better about all this, don't you? Well, what about those of you in Sonoma Verde? Let's talk about those of you out there. Is he going to keep the budget lean and mean for you? What's your future look like? Well, since he's been in office, let's just find out how efficient he's been and listen to the surprise in his voice when he talks about, oh my goodness, look at this. Remember, folks, one thing that a lot of people forget is when he was campaigning, he was talking about bringing common sense budgeting to the city council, that he was smart about budgeting and about finances, that he had reviewed these things. Well, listen to what he has to say now, and listen to the surprise in his voice when he talks about, and in fact, he uses the word like I think it's like it's more than troubling. It was shocking or something like that. Listen to how surprised he is over some of the things. Listen.
We're also looking at the cost of the sewage. Now, here's a big thing. Okay, don't want anybody to get blindsided. The sewage rates have been exponentially rising. And what I mean by sewage rates is the cost of that sewage processing. So that black and gray water that hits our lifting station, it gets pumped up to Rockwall, and then from Rockwall, it gets pumped to a facility in Rowlett. And the Rowlett facility is the one that processes it. The cost of sewage over this year has been exponentially rising. And it has gotten to the point that it now looks like the city, if we don't do anything about it, the city might be starting to dip into a loss in the hole for it. So the sewage rates are going to change. But that is one of the things that popped up in the budget is what it's actually costing, and it's actually a little on the terrifying side. I'm gonna see if I can find it real quick.
Little on the terrifying side.
Skyrocketed to 155%.
Skyrocketed.
For the city. Now the city at this point hasn't changed its rate, but unfortunately, with the 100 up till May, with a 155% jump. It's going to change the rate because at that point the city's literally dipping in to pull money out to cover the usage, and that is deficit spending, and we are going to stop that because, like I said, it's not being a good steward of the taxpayers' funds to participate in deficit spending. We see that way too much in larger municipalities and larger governments, state, federal. So we are going to curtail that.
So deficit spending, he's going to stop deficit spending. So if you're stopping deficit spending, it means that you are in a deficit. Isn't that what it means when you say you're going to stop deficit spending? I just want to make sure. Or you see, when I was mayor, when I was on city council, we prevented deficit spending because we were looking ahead. We were not surprised by things that came along. We anticipated these things. Here's the big question for you, Slick Willie. The city of McLennan-Chisholm makes up 1/3 of the total fire district. The other 2/3 of the fire district, where more than half of all fire emergency calls go, pay nothing, contribute absolutely nothing to their fire safety. We now have 100% of the responsibility for those who are in our unincorporated area of the fire district. They contribute nothing, and yet the cost of fire protection is going up exponentially beginning in the next budget year. We've got one, excuse me, let me just say that we have one more year of kind of floating along. Why? Because when I was mayor, we applied for what's called a SAFER grant, federal grant, that was intended to help set up the fire department. And remember, when I was mayor, our goal was to see volunteers and see professional firefighters, professional full-time firefighters fill the gaps, fill in the days, so that we don't have full-time firefighters on our payroll. Because all of the fire departments around in the surrounding areas, every one of them has a 1 day you work and 2 days you're off. Every firefighter practically has a part-time job. And our vision was that we were going to hire these off-duty firefighters who were highly experienced. They were all certified. They all had health care. They all were basically taken care of, and we just needed them to fill in. That was the goal, so that we could keep the cost of fire protection down. But what's happened is we now have full-time firefighters on staff who are receiving health benefits. Oh, and by the way this is structured, their pay is structured, we're paying overtime to these firefighters. When William Dahl talks about cutting the budget and being lean and mean, watch what he doesn't do when it comes to the fire department. So the question is this: a year from now, you will not be able to sustain the same fire department at the same rate. So you have two choices. Raise our taxes. Well, you have three choices. Raise our taxes. Number two, you can cut the budget of the fire department. Or number three, you can get those who are in the unincorporated area of the fire district who contribute absolutely nothing to their fire safety. You can start getting them to contribute to that. One of the ideas that I had was that if you want fire protection, if you want full-time fire protection, if you want the full gamut of what our citizens in McLennan-Chisholm receive, then you pay a membership fee with the fire department. It's done all the time, perfectly legal. And if you don't, then the only call that the MCVFD, or excuse me, the McLennan-Chisholm Fire Rescue Department will respond to is a verified fire. So if you have a smoke call, if there's a call or a smoke alarm, something like that, the sheriff's department, which is paid for by the city, by the county, that those people actually contribute to funding, the sheriff's department would go and check to see if there's an actual fire. Other than that, the only thing that the fire department will respond to is an actual fire. So it will do two things. One, it will determine whether or not the level of service at the McLennan-Chisholm Fire Rescue Department is really of value. Because if those in the unincorporated area don't say that they don't want that kind of service, well then perhaps maybe we don't have the kind of service that we really need or that people would want. And maybe you should go back to reconsidering what I had proposed when I was mayor. But the big question is, how are you going to pay for it? If you're such a common sense conservative, Mr. Slick Willie, where's your solution with that? Haven't talked about it. Haven't heard you say anything about it. Why? Because you don't care about it. Because frankly, those are some of your supporters, aren't they? Those are the people who helped get you elected into office. Yes, the people who are outside, who live outside of the city of McLennan-Chisholm, who contribute nothing in taxes to this city. They helped get your current city council and mayor elected, because they know that the people that are in office are going to help sustain their free ride. That's what's happening, and that's what I think is going to continue to happen so long as we have people like Slick Willie Dahl in office. So that's the big question. Slick Willie Dahl. There's so many. I mean, we can do shows almost every week for some of the things that some of the misinformation, half-truths, and outright lies that Mr. Dahl talks about, and I won't stop highlighting these facts. That's why this is Straight Talk with Bunker Bob. And one thing that I should note is that I haven't taken any liberties with the video. I've basically cut it out because the guy talks slower than Scott Turnbull, which tells you a lot. And I know that Scott Turnbull is going to get me on that one. But the fact is, he's as boring as molasses, and the things that he says are just, so much of it is just absolutely untrue and just full of hot air. So that's why I do this show, so that we can cut through all of the nonsense and misinformation. And so I appreciate the fact that you come back and that you watch. And if you have questions or comments, please email me at bob@bunkerbob.com. Tomorrow is the city council meeting. No, it's not. Excuse me. No, tomorrow is not the city council meeting, but I will be back probably Thursday or Friday, depending on work issues. But I've got more issues to talk about. There is an issue with the violation of the Texas Open Meetings Act with this current city council. And I'm waiting on just one report. I'm waiting on an open records request to come back to me before we give you the lowdown on that. But I think that this is something that is going to have a true ramifications, and I think that the state is going to come in and do something about what the city council, the mayor and city council have done. So anyway, that's neither here nor there yet until we come back. So I hope that I'll see you next time, and I hope you have a great week. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.